Hello, everyone. Welcome to Droning on Live. I'm not Ash. My name is Dan, and we're going to be chatting to Ash about, I guess, the evolution of droning on, firstly, and learning about his journey through his ownership of different drones and how droning on came to be. And then we're just going to talk about the evolution and the future of drones as a whole, and where's that going to go? Where are drones going to go? What possible technology might we see in the future? And yeah, just a general chat with everyone in the comments as well would be fantastic to learn about everyone else's kind of journey into drones, what got them interested in drones, and yeah, where they see themselves going in the coming months or years. So thank you, firstly, Ash. It has been a very long time coming of us sitting down and chatting. So I appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Pleasure. Yeah, hey guys. So you can see me now. This is a very, very ad hoc stream over here. But hopefully it works out and hopefully we're looking and sounding good. Sorry, I'm a bit shiny. I need to sort out the window. But yeah, this is Dan's show basically, and we just offered to host this on Droning On Live. Dan will also be presenting this onto his own brilliant channel. And also this is on behalf of their brilliant community over there in Australia, the Mavic Mini group. You might want to introduce a little bit more about that as well, Dan, but this is your show, so you take the lead.
For sure. Yeah. So for context for everyone else out there who's listening, we've got a very hyper niche group called Mavic Mini Australia, but we're open to really anyone joining the group. There will be some changes coming to the group very soon, but we do have lots of competitions, lots of giveaways, lots of events, which is what we're doing today with Ash. So we've got some really exciting things coming up on Mavic Mini Australia, and we're really just trying to create, I guess, a club, a drone club where people can feel welcome and comfortable and have open conversations without getting kind of shot down by the community. So we're really trying to open up conversations and allow everyone to ask the questions that they're burning to ask about their drone or about the rules or regulations or whatever it may be. So that's kind of what we're trying to foster over there, a really nice, friendly community, which so far it's been fantastic. So definitely join us if you want to learn more about drones in general, the Mavic Mini, join some competitions and giveaways. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Mavic Mini is still one of my favourites. I haven't had much chance to fly it recently, but it is such a good little drone. And the other drones, the other Mavic range are nice and portable and compact, but the Mavic Mini you just can't beat because it really does fit in your pocket. So it's definitely one of my favourites. And I'll be joining your group as well, as long as you'll have me as an honorary Brit living in Sweden in an Australian
We might
group.
let it slide. Yeah, it really is such a powerful drone, and it's such a great starting point for so many people as well. I find, just through my YouTube channel, like I'll find a lot of people will ask me, what drone should I get? That's such a common question. And I feel like the Mavic Mini really is one of those great, like solid starting points for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of yourself, Ash, I'd love to hear your kind of journey and your trajectory through drones. What started your love of drones? How did this whole thing start for you?
Well, that's the weird thing, really. I didn't start with drones, and I think that these days, drones are so easy to get into, and anyone can buy a drone. Pretty much anybody can fly a drone. My mother's flown my drone. My dad's flown my drones. And that's a very different generation for them because when they were younger they didn't have anything really apart from control line things that flew. So I started when I was 12 flying radio controlled aircraft. So I remember when I was 12 heading over to the flying field with my dad, and I had a glow fuel, so two-stroke plane, and you'd fill it up with fuel, and it was a great feeling refueling and actually starting the engine, like you do a full-size rotary aircraft, actually starting it and then taking off and launching up into the air. And yeah, it was a very, very satisfying feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's how it all started, hey? So it was like you and your dad kind of learning with so it was a fixed wing plane that you'd have to fuel with petrol.
Yeah, basically. And then you take off.
Wow.
And this is the difference as well. You fly a drone now, and when you're up there flying around for 20 minutes or so, you've got a constant indication on the screen of how much flight time have you got left. And you know that I should start flying back now. Whereas when you're flying with glow fuel on board and you're only using your eyes, you've got no, remote FPV view. So you're kind of having to listen because you can hear the tone of the engine change as it starts to run out and lean out on the fuel. So you'd have to listen for that. But sometimes you'd just be having so much fun, you'd forget and the engine would stop.
Right.
And so then you'd have a dead stick landing where you shout dead stick, and everyone in the airfield knows that they need to sort of look
Yeah,
out
yeah,
for
yeah.
it, and you'd basically then just drift it in and land it. But you know what I loved? I loved the fact that you then land, refuel, not just take a battery out, put a battery in, actually plug in a fuel hose, feed in some more fuel, start the engine again, and take off. And amazing fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever flown
That's,
fixed wing RC
no,
aircraft?
I haven't. Has anyone else, Keith or anyone?
I think we've lost
That's
Keith.
something I'd love to do. Hey, that would be fantastic. And like you said, there's more of a process to it. It's not just, oh, just take out that battery, put in the other one. My control's already turned off. I take straight back up again to the sky. It's,
Yeah.
you don't. I guess it's a process. You're sitting there, you're waiting for it to fuel, and I'm guessing you would get attuned to the different sounds. Would you? It's more like you've got to be even more present, listening to what's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. Because the other side of it is you might have you have a carburetor. It's an engine. It's not a brushless motor that's running or not running. And sometimes you just wouldn't quite get the tune right. And also, if in summer you tune them differently to you would in winter. So before you take off, you've got the engine running. The first thing you do is tweak that carburetor a little bit, like a choke kind of thing, or letting more fuel or more air in. Sometimes you'd hear, it'd start spluttering in air as the engine started to warm up, and you'd be thinking, "Oh no." And I'll never forget, you had other problems as well. So you'd have, we used to run the receivers on AA batteries. So your receiver pack would have maybe, be running on 3 AA batteries. And sometimes I remember my dad spent 6 months building a Cessna 152. I think it was a 55-inch wingspan. I think that's about over a meter. I'm rubbish with inches now. But I remember him spending ages, and he wrapped all the wings, built them up, wooden wing structure and everything, and it looked beautiful. And he rolled. We got to the airfield, and I said, "Dad, shall I maiden fly this plane? Because you don't fly. You just take me to the airfield, and you're my wheels, my transport." And he said, "No,
Yep.
no, son. I've built this. I'm gonna fly it. It's my aircraft." Started this massive 152 MDS engine. I think it was MDS was the brand at the time. Thing roaring down the runway, like massive, bigger than anything I'd owned or flown at the age of 12. Took off, and it carried on, and it was looking really good. And I said to my dad, "You're not going to bank now and turn around, because it's going to be out of visual sight soon. You're not going to be able to see it." "I'm trying, son. I'm trying." And we think that the receiver pack battery had died, because after it took off, it just carried on and on and on. This is 30 years ago. It was a very different safety thing back then. I mean, now it would be catastrophic, such a big aircraft. But we were taken off from a runway of an airfield where we had permission to fly. There was nothing around for miles, and these things didn't fly for that long or that sort of range. So we found the aircraft smashed up in a pile surrounded by cows after about 2 hours of hunting. But yeah, it had its challenges, as do modern drones today. That's for sure.
Oh, that's devastating as well. All that work gone into it. Oh.
I think it's cute that you actually had a motor. Maybe I'm going to show my age here, but my first intro to flight was gliders, and you didn't have a remote control. You just hope your glider was really shit, because if it was really good, you had a long way to go to get it back. It's like, oh no. And you just hope it'd go 50 meters will do. I just want it to fly, and sometimes they'd go and go and go, and it'd be 400-500 meters plus with these big gliders that you make out of balsa and tissue, and I can't remember what it was that you put over them to make the tissue tight. But anyway, if you had a really good one, you were sort of almost dreading it working, because you knew you were up for a big hike to go and fetch it back again. But they were really throw and forget. Yeah, so.
And I'm guessing you didn't have
rudder control.
Yeah. And what, they're sort of tracking as well, so you were just guessing where it could have gone. Is that right?
Yeah. It could have gone anywhere. It's like throwing a paper plane.
Yeah, it's like you just hope that it's in that general direction.
Yeah.
But did they ever land in one piece? Could you ever fly them more than once, or did it land and smash?
Yeah, sometimes if you're lucky, if it landed in a grass field, you'd be good for another throw. But more often than not, they ended up in bushes or trees or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right.
And I can remember because the wings, because they were one long wing that went across the central body, and that used to be put on with elastic bands. So you'd always find it with the wing had flown off that direction, and the fuselage was over that direction, and you have to get more elastic bands out and try and fix the wings back on and give it another throw.
That was the other problem with glow fuel. Yeah, we used to hold the fixed wings together with elastic bands. You'd put the wing on and then secure elastic bands diagonally over the top of it. But glow fuel used to rot anything that was made of rubber. It would just literally dissolve it. So you had to, sometimes you'd have to check your elastic bands before every day of flying because there wouldn't be any elastic band left. But the next step from then, I mean, it's good to start with this because, we're talking about the evolution of drones. This is where it all began. This is long before, the thing still common to all of this is the fact that you had a transmitter and a receiver. That's the persistent bit that's gone all the way through to modern drones now. I then got into helicopters and started flying helicopters, which absolutely loved. I had a Hirobo shuttle, was one of my first. That was a 30 size, and then I had can't remember the name of the bigger one, but I bought a 60 size helicopter. That thing was massive. It was taller than me from boom to cockpit front. And that was glow fuel as well. So when you started the engine and the sound of the rotors whirring up and blowing the glow fuel down just sounded lovely. I just got a call out, sorry, on YouTube. Tim Jackson just said, is this pre-recorded? No, hey, Tim, we're here, we're live. For everybody watching on YouTube, this is such an ad hoc stream. We just decided randomly to try and understand how OBS works and send it to YouTube. So thanks just to some of the guys, Tim, Rick, Sean, Bird's Eye, Drone Viral, everyone for joining. This is, really appreciate your support. And let us know if we can do anything to improve the quality of the stream. Hopefully we're looking and sounding okay. But back to you anyway, Dan.
Yeah, cool. So then you went to the helicopters, and then, so when was this as well, just for a kind of a timeline? Like so you said you started at 12 with the fixed wings. And then when did you kind of go into the helicopters?
So I flew fixed wing up until the point at which I left home, I think, because that was the point where I could actually afford a helicopter. They were really expensive in those days, mainly because of the engines. A brushless motor and a speed controller doesn't really cost a lot, but an actual two-stroke engine, they had quite a price tag to them, and keeping them running was a pain. And the challenge with the helicopter is that to fly a helicopter, you need to know how to auto rotate, which is when, if the motor fails, the procedure to, a plane you can land and drift down. A helicopter will just drop unless you use something called auto rotation, where you basically invert the pitch of the rotors, let it fall to spin up the rotors as it's falling, and then just as it's about to touch down, you reverse the pitch of the rotors to effectively generate lift. And I only had to do that once in my helicopter flying, but it was terrifying because the challenge with helicopters is that when you crash those, you crash them. It's hundreds and hundreds of dollars to fix every time you crash them. A bit like getting into FPV, but much more expensive with a helicopter. So was it a
successful landing?
Yeah, that one was. Yeah, but I smashed up pretty much every other helicopter just flying them regularly. So the time that I had to... the time that I really could have really smashed it up, I didn't. Every other time I smashed them up by accident. But I was probably about 18 by that point.
Okay. So you've been in that space for a long time then. You've really kind of seen quite an evolution through from fixed wings to helicopters. And then was your next purchase a drone then, or did you have something else after that?
No, then got into gliders. I had a 10-foot glider, 10-foot wingspan glider, 10 feet in centimeters. I don't know, a lot, but this thing was gigantic, and it was powered as well. So rather than having to slope saw, I could actually take this thing to a field. Each wing barely fit in my car. They were so long, and this thing, when you basically use the motor to get it up into the air, and then cut the motor and just glide around. And if you did a dive bomb and a swoop up, the sound it made was just like lovely sound. That's, I think, as I got older, I needed to relax a bit more and chill out. I I've actually got some old videos of these, and I'll try and find them on YouTube. But yeah, that gliding was great. And I tell you what, anybody now that loves drones, I still always go back to my gliders. I love them, and it's such a great way to chill. You know, it's a really relaxing experience, and you get a really long flight time as well, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And what the modern gliders as well, do you have control over them? Like you said that some of them had like propellers, right? Or some form of motor?
Yeah, so the one I had a brushless motor at the front, so we were getting on a bit now later. Brushless motors were still very expensive, and they were very heavy, and but they produce so much more power than a brushed motor, and so that was really when we started to understand brushless motors. I remember looking at it and thinking, why the hell has it got 3 wires coming out of the back of it instead of 2? What happened to black and red? Now we've got 3 different colors. What's going on? But yeah, that's when it really started to get exciting, because you take off, and then as soon as you stopped the motor, up in the air, the folding prop would fold back so that you had loads of aerodynamics, and that was just great fun.
Right.
Absolutely,
yeah, that's
loved
cool.
that.
So did you say you're bringing up some videos?
I'll try and find if I can. I'm not sure, and even if I can show, I don't know how I share. Is this working? Yeah, I think it is. We're very
cool.
new to OBS, I'm afraid, but I don't know if you can see on the stream. I think the guys on the stream can see this glider, but there you go. 10.5 feet wide, in fact.
Wow.
Oh,
So this is your video here.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
this is mine. Oh, it was that was the maiden flight, by the way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's that really got me interested in slope soaring. So you can see it's just lovely. You only had rudder and elevator control, no aileron, no flaps. So when you tried to land this thing, this was the landing. It did not want to go down. It was so aerodynamic and light.
Oh wow!
So trying to get it down on the ground, it didn't want to stop.
It was born to glide.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just absolutely loved that glider. I recommend that still today. Anybody that wants to get into gliding, or anyone who wants to try an alternative type of flight, buy yourself a glider, because they're great fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. So then when was your first drone purchase after that?
My first drone purchase was a Hubsan X4. I think, as everybody's first drone purchase was. Yeah. And it's funny, I walked into an electronics shop the other day, and I saw their shelves stacked with X4s. And it's lovely to see it still for sale, because it's a great drone. You can crash it, smash it. Anybody watching now that wants to get into drones and you want something that's really quite robust, I still to this day recommend considering a Hubsan X4, because they are great and they're cheap.
Yeah, and they're a great brand as well. They have a lot of aftermarket care as well with their parts, which is great. So if you do have any issues, they've got quite an extensive kind of range of propellers available and accessories and components, which is great. Because that was one of my early ones as well.
Definitely. Yeah, they're really durable. What about you, Keith? What was your first drone?
Yeah, pretty sure mine was a Hubsan as well. And I think it lasted about 8 minutes. Typical guy, didn't bother reading any of the instructions, just stuck batteries in it and sent it on its way straight to a tree. And that was probably my intro into drones, which was cool. Didn't put me off them. It would be nice to have a bit of a longer flight. But hey, I'm used to gliders that just, you throw and they're just into the ground. So that was quite a long flight for me.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it's progress, isn't it? It's learning, and if you can smash them up, it's, what? I think of the analogy. When I bought my first car at the age of 17, I had a Ford Fiesta 1.1. It was 1983, the car. And I remember that it was only when I rolled that car over that I realized I wasn't indestructible. I realized I wasn't a Formula One driver that didn't crash. I realized that I could actually hurt myself. And it's a bit like that with drones. It's, people are so overconfident when they buy their drone now, because they do so much for you. And I think you need to crash a drone, or maybe 2, a few times to realize that you need to fly them carefully. It's invaluable crashing as much as it is flying them.
Yeah, and I've brought this up a few times about the synergy with riding horses, and they say that you can't you're not a horse rider until you've fallen off about 20 times, and because other than that you're just sitting on it and the horse is taking you on its journey or whatever. But to be a really good rider, you literally have to fall off about a dozen times. I think drone flying is very similar. I think if you've never ever crashed a drone in years of flying drones, I don't think you're really flying them. You're just sort of, you're running through the controls and stuff, and you're playing it really safe.
Yeah.
But you've never taken it anywhere risky. You're not really pushing it to the limits. You're just sort of, running the controls, which is not quite the sort of same thing. So, I mean, there's been a few times where I've had a couple of close calls. There's been a few times where I've, hit a wall because I got too close. But I've learned from that, and I think unless you do sometimes, push yourself a little bit, you don't always get the benefit of that sort of experience. So when you actually need to be going somewhere that's a little bit more difficult, and that's when your anxiety starts kicking in and you start freaking out.
True.
Because you're just not used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to become complacent as a drone operator, to forget to check your props before you fly, to forget this and that. So yeah, absolutely valid point.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's really good. And like in terms of starter drones, then do either of you have recommendations? You said the Hubsan 4. What are your thoughts on like the Tello as a starter drone, for example, like a practice drone?
I mean, Tello is great. Tello is really, really good. But to be honest, if you want to really, really become a good drone operator, the first drone you should buy should be one without GPS, without optical flow positioning, without VPS system. It should be a drone that you actually have to fly, because otherwise you just become complacent. You think that all drones will hold their position when you let go of the control sticks. The reality is that every drone operator out there needs to be ready for ATI mode. They need to be ready for a loss of compass, a loss of GPS, because it will happen to you one day. It's in my drone flying throughout owning lots and lots of drones. It's only happened once to me where I've lost. I had an ATI failure. It went into ATI mode. I think the GPS or the compass, one or the other failed, and I remember it started to drift. And I thought, oh crap! And you have to manually pilot it, because when that happens, it won't hover in its position when you let go of the sticks. It will fly away, and all the flyaways that we hear about these days, the majority. You'll read the operator saying in a forum, oh, my drone flew away. It just didn't, it just went. I had no control of it. Well, that's because it went into ATI mode and you didn't know how to fly it back to yourself manually. And also, the other thing is return to home. I hate that feature, and I wish there wasn't actually... No, I can't really... I almost wish there wasn't a button for it on the controller. I wish it was there if... in an emergency that the drone invokes itself, because I see and I read about far too many operators, even a YouTuber that has a massive following uses return to home on almost every single flight to get his drone back. And that quite frankly just means you can't fly. You shouldn't be using return to home. If you can't navigate your drone back to yourself and land it yourself, then you shouldn't own a drone, really.
And we've spoken about the default setting as well for return to home is normally 30 meters. So a lot of people don't look into that. And as we've mentioned on previous events, 30 meters, you could be hitting a tree at 30 meters, or you could be hitting a building at that height. Like you need to, if you are using return to home for whatever reason, need to change that setting. Otherwise, there's a high possibility you might hit something, which people don't seem to look into that setting or maybe know that there's a setting there for that. And yeah, you do notice a lot of people kind of rely on that.
Also, there's when you see comments about hit the return to home, and it didn't return to home, it just landed because they're like 30 meters away. I'm like, why are you returning to home from 30 meters away? Just turn it around and fly it back. I mean, it's there.
Yeah, exactly. You can go and grab it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is an over-reliance on return to home. I mean, I don't use it at all. And so I'll either use my camera to get me back, or I'll use the map and fly back on the map. And so I don't actually use the return home button. I mean, it doesn't help if you've got no GPS, because the map's pretty much useless. But certainly, if you can turn the camera around, you should know where you are.
Exactly.
So, it shouldn't be too hard to get you back. And then, once you get within a reasonable distance, you can hear it. And so you know you're pretty close. But yeah, I do think there is a reliance on return to home.
Yeah, I mean, always know where it is in the sky. We should all be flying line of sight. We should always be, be able to look up and see our drone. And when you fly your drone back, please everybody get into the habit of looking at your drone and flying it back visually without looking at the screen. That's how, if you can do that, you become a far better operator. So you control your altitude, you control your direction, your ascent. The other common mistake people make is to fly their drone above them and then to just descend all the way down. Try and fly your drone back to yourself whilst descending as well, because drones prefer to be in forward motion. You actually conserve battery by flying in forward motion. You actually use more battery in a hover than you do in forward or backwards or side in flight, basically in directional flight. So you're actually preserving your battery if you're moving. I mean, it's not really a consideration if the drone's above you and you're descending to land anyway, but it's just learning to be a better operator by coordinating your altitude and your movement at the same time. You'll become far better as an operator.
And that's actually, reminded me of a lot of comments that I received on my early Mavic Mini videos about how there was a lack of, sensors, a lack of a tracking mode, and how a lot of the time it's actually focused on the pilot to learn how to fly and learn a lot of these maneuvers. So, I was a little kind of indifferent to it. I almost expected that it would have it, but people made a really good point that this also forces people not to rely on all these active track modes and all these automated modes. It's actually forcing you to learn how to fly the drone.
It is.
Yeah, they were talking about they weren't going to buy a Mavic Mini because it didn't have the forward sensors on it. So they're going to go buy a Mavic Air 2. I'm like, you're really going to spend an extra grand just because you couldn't be bothered to figure out where the hell your drone was? Because, you don't really need sensors. The only time the sensors have gone off on my Mavic 2 Pro was when my donkey decided to walk up and have a good look. So my wife one day asked me to have a check on the animals, and I'd hurt my back and she'd gone to work. So I'm like, oh yeah, sure. So I opened the window and sent the Mavic 2 out, flew it around the property, checked the horses, took a few photos, checked the donkeys, took a few photos, emailed her the photos, said, yeah, the animal's fine. And she's like, did you send your drone out? And I'm like, yeah, I did. But when I sent the drone across to the horse paddock, the horses all bolted, they scarpered everywhere. And just as soon as they heard the Mavic coming in, they were off. But the donkeys are much more inquisitive. So I've got the video, and it's sort of the drone, and it's sort of hovering a couple of meters above the ground. And the next minute, my sensors are going off, and I've looked down at the video stream, and one of my donkeys is Mavic starts to back up, and I think that's the only time I actually had my sensors go off. So it seemed a really bizarre comment. Yeah, I'd rather spend another grand to have forward sensors. Yeah, and I'm just like, well, but if you're flying your drone properly, you don't really need the sensors in the first place. I mean, that's
I'll tell you what, it depends really. It depends on the use of the drone, because when I took the Mavic 2 Air, Mavic Air 2, into a forest to test its active track, because I must say I've got I've owned loads of Mavics, all the range, never ever used active track until the Mavic Air 2 came out, because I was quite excited by APAS evolving to the point where it really was clever. And I must say that's where the limitations of the lack of side sensing on the Mavic Air 2 really shone, because it nearly, and its lack of upward as well, because it nearly crashed into a tree, whereas the Mavic 2 wouldn't have done that, because it had its side sensing and its upward sensing. So it depends on your use of the drone, but if you're never going to be using active track, then you don't need any sensing, literally, as long as you're a competent operator.
you are right. I actually had to send mine into a very enclosed building a couple of months back, and I switched it, rather than using the Mavic Mini, I switched across to the Mavic 2 for that reason, because I had to drop it almost down the chimney, so it was about a 600 mil by 600 mil. I had to drop it down in and then fly it through. So that's when the sensors are handy.
Yeah.
The only problem is sometimes the sensors become problematic, because then they start pushing you away, and then you sort of, sensors going off all over the place.
True.
So
That's true. I've got a couple of videos. The only thing is, I think the people watching on your stream, Dan, wouldn't be able to see the videos I'm showing, but you maybe could edit those in later for the stream.
Yeah, yeah.
So if happy if I just show a couple of these?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
I think they'll make you laugh. I mean, this really shows how much we've evolved now with FPV. This was back in 2013, so 7 years ago. No, actually, sorry, 2008. Oh, that could have been when the camera reset. I don't know. But anyway, a long time ago. And this was this was strapping a little camera, a digital camera, onto the front of a dual motor jet that I loved flying. Now, these things, you had no time to think when you were flying these, genuinely. They were so rapid. And this is all line of sight. There was no FPV feed. I literally had to land it to look at the footage. But this is, you can see how far you can see line of sight, because I'm flying this only by eyes. And it was quite a windy day as well. But this was all we had back then. I had a 5-minute flight before I had to land it again. It was carrying a massive nickel metal hydride battery pack. And I think it's this video where I come into land and I nearly hit myself and I have to jump out of the way.
It's almost like the early days of FPV here.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, it wasn't this one. That was one. And then here's the actual jet itself. Ooh, so this is what the actual jet looked like. So it's 30 amps it was pulling from the batteries.
That is so cool.
And literally to launch them, you'd start the motors. God, I look older there than I do now. Throw it and look at the big antenna on the old RF transmitter. I've got audio as well, actually. You'll hear it when it dive bombs. I don't know if you can hear the audio.
No, because we're on mute.
But these things were so rapid. That's seeing it in the air. You can see just how quickly it flew. And I think if you gave that to most drone operators now, they would not stand a chance of being able to control it. And this is where I say about buying a manual drone that has no stabilization, no control system that keeps it in a hover. If you can fly something manually, then you can fly anything. And there are so many other avenues to radio controlled that you guys should all explore, because the feeling and the thrill of flying something like that, amazing fun.
Would you say that that's prepared you more for flying drones now, like with your knowledge from flying all these different flight options out there? Like has it improved your knowledge, would you say?
Yeah, definitely, because you understand more about aviation. It's not just about controlling the drone, it's more about understanding the aircraft. What can it do, what are the limits of this aircraft? And I keep shuddering when I see these people installing custom firmware on their drones, their DJI drones, to increase the tilt threshold and increase the vertical ascent and descent. I don't think they understand that DJI have put those constraints in for a good reason, because when you start to tilt a quad beyond a certain point, you're reducing its ability to maintain altitude, and that means that ultimately you're going to fly the drone in a way that it's not really meant to be flown. And that's fine if you know what you're doing, but for those people just flashing it and not really understanding the aerodynamics, it's definitely a risk. Yeah.
And do you have any more, like you mentioned that, starting out with a drone without GPS and kind of all these safety options inbuilt, where it's just hovers and it holds its position and it's just almost like you don't have to think about it. Besides, obviously, your recommendation of maybe starting with something where you really have to learn how to control something without any system in place. Do you have any other kind of recommendations for people wanting to start out with any sort of flight options that are out there, like whether it is FPV or the fixed wings or the gliders or drones?
Well,
do you have any other thing that stands out?
As soon as you run the Australia Mavic Mini group, I have to say this, don't I? Mavic Mini, because it is just a brilliant little aircraft. And this one came to me from DJI, so it's an ex-demo one actually. But it's been bashed about. It's hard wearing. I mean, the video that I put live where I flew this thing in a hotel, shows just how capable this drone is. I don't know if you've seen that video.
No, I don't think so.
But I took the drone. Basically, it was right in the middle of COVID, and I just thought it's time to do something a little bit different with this Mavic Mini and see what it can do. And so I was actually working from a hotel one day, and I just thought, let's see what this thing is really capable of. Let's see how much I can push it. And so I flew it in a hotel. I got permission from the hotel. The hotel was closed at the time, so there was nobody in the restaurant or in any of the public areas. And I put together this video, which I've given hotels have really suffered through this pandemic. And so I've given them full 4K footage to use for their marketing, no charge, because they need as much as they can get. I mean, you could never get a Mavic Air 2 through that gap.
That little gap, yeah.
Not a chance.
That's nice.
And it's
was that the only take? Did you crap?
No,
that was the only take.
There was one take there, and I impressed myself. I don't know how, but this is all Mavic Mini. This is all pretty much video straight from the drone as well. I didn't have to really apply any color grading to any of this, and I just think it's such a great drone because if I was doing this with the Mavic 2 or the Mavic Air, I would not be comfortable flying it in a hotel that I didn't own, a very prestigious hotel. I love this shot. I was really pleased with this flying through.
That's a cool shot.
Yeah, flying through these big ball things. It was a bit tricky on the way back because after I'd flown through them once, I decided to turn around and fly back. But because of the air draft, they started to wobble.
Yeah, they would have done.
But the staff loved watching it. They'd never seen anybody fly a drone indoors. And you imagine for this kind of thing could be really good for a hotel that's struggling with business because of COVID. This could go viral, and I hope that they do something with the footage because it'd be lovely to see them making the most of it, really.
The one where you went, this one there, where you went through the light bulbs, that's a really nice shot. Yeah, that's really cool.
It's a bit dreamy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, really cool.
This is quite cool as well, through some tables. And
this really is invaluable, isn't it? Invaluable marketing for them.
It is, and all with this little drone.
Yeah.
It's incredible, really. I love this little drone. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's my go-to drone. So even though I've got a Mavic 2, I still prefer the Mini. I pull the Mini out more than I ever pull out the Mavic 2 at the moment.
Yeah, I must say I do. But you know what? The other side of it is that when you've flown the Mini for a while, or you've flown the Mavic Air for a while, flying the Mavic 2 after flying these little drones feels like such an honor. Like it feels like going from flying a Cessna to stepping into a Dreamliner. It just feels there's something really special about it.
That's great.
But I gave them all of the footage, and this was the closing shot of it as well, which they've got a lovely big rug in the hotel, and I thought that'd be a nice vertical ascent straight upwards.
Yeah. It really does enable so many options with the Mavic Mini, doesn't it? Like so many industries could benefit. Like imagine the real estate industry in general. Like some of those shots you get would be fantastic.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean and this is what I'm seeing now in FPV. In a few years ago, it was all about shots for commercial TV content on the drone. A fixed GPS type drone, but now it's all about the FPV shots. Bringing these shots swooshing in and flying around, and they're so cinematic. And I'm into FPV as well. I've got a few of them over there on the wall so that I can just grab them and go out and fly. But it's making me. Sorry, go on.
What's that one in the middle you've got with the cage around it?
This is one that was sent to me, and I never actually didn't review it. It's a Xiaomi. I'm yet to review it. Let me just grab it. It's a Xiaomi folding drone. It's quite an unusual one, actually. I love the look of it. It's got a tiltable gimbal on there as well, just a one-axis little tilting gimbal. But it's folding like that.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's quite a cool design. That it's also unusual in that the props are actually on the underside. The downside of that is that if you hand catch it in flight, ouch. So it's
Right, of course.
nice idea, but it needed cages underneath as well, rather than just yeah. So it's quite bizarre. Just to
Yeah.
Mike in the chat. Sorry, Mike. Yeah, that is the hotel that I used to work from. Actually, we've moved away from there now, but the Mavic Mini video is from working. I used to work from there, like hot desk from that hotel. So I got to know all of the staff. You know, like really good friends actually, and still in contact with them now. They were so good to me, and you know, so hence giving them all of that footage. You know, but yeah, it's a nice drone, and then there's a couple of 5-inch FPV quads, and then there's a couple of 3 inches. There's an Emax there, which is one of my favourite little micro brushless 3 inches. And it's just a great way to chill out and unwind FPV. You know, you're in your own little world, and you can, you know, really be creative. It's like dancing. You know, it's it's very satisfying. I recommend you guys have a go. But that will also help your GPS drone skills, because again, you have to understand a lot more about flight and aviation and how an aircraft stays up in the air to fly FPV, and so that can help with flying, you know, regular quads as well.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So we've probably only touched on the surface of your journey through all the different drones and different things that you've been flying throughout your time, and instead of kind of going through, you know, every single one that you've owned, at what point, like, what was the catalyst for you to go, okay, I'm going to start droning on? How did that come about?
So that's quite a funny one, really, because there was a drone crowdfunder called Zano. I've actually got a Zano boxed, brand new, that's never been opened. Because this Zano was one of Europe's biggest crowdfund failures. It was a drone crowdfunder. As usual, these are a disaster most of the time, and it raised millions and millions, 2.3 million in backing. That's a lot of money, and it basically was a disaster. And they claimed that this drone, you know, it was one of the first micro GPS drones with a high resolution camera, and unfortunately it didn't live up to any of that in the end. Unfortunately, they were based in Wales as well, so UK based, but it had global backers, and they showed signs of struggling and failing. And there was a Zano owners Facebook group, and I joined it because I'd invested. You know, this was back in early 2014, I think it was, or so. And I was quite excited by it, you know, because I was just getting into GPS drones at that point as well. So I backed it, but I pulled out with a refund quite early on after I saw that it just didn't look viable. And in the group that I was a member of, there were thousands of members. And I said to the guys, look, guys, there are problems with this crowdfunder. You need to take note and make sure you fully understand what you're investing in here. And I outlined in bullets all of the challenges and the problems. And I just got abuse. I got trolled, I got insulted, I got told to shut up and go away, and I'm just ruining it, and it's exciting, and it's going to be a brilliant drone. And a year later, the company went into liquidation. They didn't deliver. I think they delivered drones to a few beta users, a couple of hundred betas, but none of them flew. They didn't fly. Company went into liquidation. Most people lost their money, and in the meantime, I'd left the group that I got trolled in, and I started a new one called Zano Backers or something like that. And rather than, you know, from that point, it had turned into, you know, instead of trying to get this drone, it was trying to help people get their money back. So helping them with their bank claims, with their PayPal claims, with their credit card challenges, and also disputes with the company itself. And we managed to get almost everybody in the group that I'd started their money back. And when this all finished, you know, it got the global media attention. When it all finished, we just thought, what a shame to disband this group now. You know, we've got a great community here called, you know, at the time was called Zano Backers or whatever. Let's just turn it into a drone community of passionate drone enthusiasts. And it only had about 1,000 members at that point. And so we said, okay, let's do that. What should we call it? And I put a few names for the group into a poll, and I said, you know, vote guys on what you think this group should be called. And overwhelmingly, everybody voted for Droning On.
Sure.
It was so that became the name, and it's still to this day a really good Facebook group of people who just love drones. And we also often discuss drone crowdfunders. You know, there are lots ongoing at the moment. One of them is Microdrone 4 from Extreme Flyers, which is also featured on the BBC because, again, they're 15 months late or so, haven't delivered a single product to anybody. The CEO is bullying and insulting people on Twitter, including me and Sean, who's in the chat from Geeks Varna. All we're doing is trying to help people. And when that campaign launched, I wrote an article to show that this is flawed. People still backed it. It raised millions, and it's currently a disaster. So it's Droning On started from something that was pretty bad, you know, a bad topic of crowdfunders, you know, failing, but it's turned into something really positive, and I'm really, really happy with that, really proud, and, you know, really, really proud of all of the members who are just really, really supportive.
Yeah. And that's really honestly like such a powerful way to start it as well, because the intention there was to help people who didn't have a voice. You know, I'm sure people couldn't communicate with this company. There was no way to actually figure out what was going on. So for you to create a community of people to really figure it out together, that's such a wonderful way to start your journey anyway, which is great. And you had no idea it was going to become Droning On at that point. So that it all started with that group that's now been renamed. And is that still the same group that you've got right now, the Droning On Facebook?
Yeah, so Droning On Facebook. And then about basically after that, the group got some attention from some other manufacturers, and some crowdfund companies sent me their drones. So ironically, the weird twist here is that Microdrone 3 from Extreme Flyers was one of the first other drones that I was then sent to review, and it was pretty naff. I had to get a number of replacements because they kept just burning up after a couple of flights. Motors started, the Becks sort of burnt out. And then another company, which I've forgotten the name of, sent me another product, and another company. And so then I thought, okay, well, I might as well start a YouTube channel. And I look back at my first videos, and I shudder and I cringe because they're so embarrassing. And, you know, I'm 10 meters away from the camera without a microphone, using a shotgun.
But that's
mic.
good. Yeah. It's got to, you know, if you look back and you're not almost disappointed in where you were at, or if you're not kind of embarrassed by where you're at, then you haven't had any sort of growth. So for you to look back and have that reaction, that's great. It means obviously you're proud of where you're at now, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a learning thing, isn't it? You know, as you start getting more into YouTube, you learn what to and what not to do, and you learn techniques that work and techniques that don't. You know, this is my
Is this your first ever video?
No, this is my 1,000 subscribers thank you video.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, at this point, I'd bought a decent camera. Well, it was a Nikon. I thought it was decent, but it's a Nikon. Now swap that with a Canon. And, you know, I bought a shotgun mic thinking that was good enough, but, you know, that you then very quickly move to a lapel, and then you want to get rid of that big, long trailing wire. So I bought the Rode Wireless Go, which is brilliant. You start upgrading things, but my advice would be to anybody, budding YouTubers out there, don't spend a load of money immediately. Pace yourself and just start to enhance things as you go along. So buy a better camera later, buy a better microphone, buy, you know, the editing equipment later. You don't need it all immediately. And primarily it's about the content. It's not about how it looks. I would say sound has to be good. People can tolerate woolly video, but people cannot tolerate bad sound.
Yes.
You know, even when I watch back my first videos, I can't tolerate the sound in those early videos, and I wouldn't watch it. So get that right first. And all you need to do is spend £30, $50, whatever, on a decent lapel clip-on mic. And back in those days, I used to plug that clip-on mic into my phone. And then what I'd do is, in edit, align the two audio between my camera and the clip-on mic, and then merge them in the editing process. But, you know, then I discovered that actually I could plug that clip-on mic straight into the camera. Duh.
Yeah.
But you live and learn.
Right. So what was, like, when you started this whole thing, because I know for, you know, a lot of people out there, and I'm sure a few people are listening, who want to start a YouTube channel, it is quite a daunting concept, really, especially now as things are moving on and we're seeing a lot of high budget YouTube content out there. So, like, what kind of advice would you give your younger self when you started out with YouTube? You gave us some ideas there about work, like focus on the content. Don't fixate on maybe the perfectionism mindset of it has to be perfect. Do you have any
Yeah.
other advice for people starting out?
Yeah, I would say think about not rambling on too much. You know, I watch my old videos and I rambled on too much. And now when I look at my videos, now when I look at the editing process, the editing workflow, I cut out so much of what I've said. So keep it to the point. People's attention on YouTube is very, very short. And you'll find that videos over 5 minutes are probably too long. Try and keep your videos to 5 minutes in length, because that generally is people's tolerance in watching content. And, you know, if you're producing a tutorial, get straight to the point. Don't spend the first minute of the video trying to get them to subscribe. I don't even ask people to subscribe, I don't think, these days in my videos, because if they like your content, they will anyway. Asking them just wastes content time. And I, you know, watch my early videos now, and I used to spend, you know, maybe 30 seconds to a minute saying, you know, if you like this channel, please subscribe, go and have a look at Instagram, look at Twitter, look at the Facebook group, blah, blah, blah. Just shut up, Ash, present the content. Because when someone searches, how do I fix this? How do I do this? They don't want you rambling on about just subscribe to my content, you know, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. They just want to know how to achieve whatever they've searched for. So I've changed that massively in recent videos. Other than that, try not to just be a talking head. Always mix in some video, mix in some static image, mix in some footage from flying your drone. Try and keep it interesting, because if your video is entirely this shot, then, you know, I will bore my viewer. And it's when you start to change little things like that that you notice your subs climbing, your views climbing. You've got it right. I mean, I remember when I had 10,000 subs, I had a number of channels that were my go-to channels that I always used to look at for, you know, how I want my channel to look. And yours, Dan, was one of mine. I always used to watch your content. I remember commenting early on your videos, years ago. And, you know, I remember thinking, I love that guy's channel and I want mine to look like that one day.
Wow, that's amazing.
I've told you this before, and I wish there was a way to find someone's lifelong comments on your channel, because you'd see some of mine from years ago, before drones.
That's amazing.
So yeah.
So would you say that that's another recommendation, maybe like having people that you can look up to, or content that you can maybe aspire to create without obviously comparing to someone else, but almost encourage you or inspire you? Like, did you find that helpful in the early days?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, don't have a list of channels that you admire. You like the way they present the content. You like the way they deliver the content, and use them as a reference, but don't copy them. You know, I see too many new YouTubers trying to be somebody else. And as soon as you fire up their video, you can just tell from the way they've lit the set and everything, and the way they've, you know, designed it, that they were trying to copy someone else. And, you know, hopefully what I'm building here, this was just a shed, by the way, a white shed. You know, what I'm doing is trying to create a creative space in here where I'm working, but also, you know, for my day job, but also it's a space where I can create and edit my content. And so, you know, I want it to be a little bit different, and, you know, I'm trying to make it look a bit different. So hopefully it does look, you know, a little bit different. The camera will never be in the same place. I want it to be very dynamic and use all the parts of this. So that's the other thing. You know, my old videos, I used to sit in the kitchen, terrible for audio, worst acoustics you can get. I used to sit behind my kitchen table, and, you know, that was my shot. And so try and change it up. You know, people get too comfortable, and I don't want my channel to look like this. So I'll often be outside. You'll notice when you go through my videos, I'll be in different places. You know, before I had this, I was different parts of the house, and I still intend to get into different parts of the house, and in the garden and by the beach and everywhere, because I want to, you know, the viewers like it if they see something different, because it's not just about the content, it's about how it looks as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think one thing that I really appreciated about the brief chat we had just through Messenger, you know, when I asked you if this was your full-time job, you told me that you had, you know, another job and a career, and then this was kind of like it always started as a hobby. And, you know, that really resonated with me, because I think a lot of people I talk to, and early on when I started YouTube, the thought process a lot of people kind of come, like the conclusion they come to is, oh, are you doing this to try to make a living out of it, or are you doing this with the intention to make money? And I think that can lose its special moment. If you're really fixated on the financial gains, it's hard to kind of blend that creative outlet with focusing heavily on making it a business. So for me, like, I was really good to hear that from you, because I know, when I came into this, I did it as a creative outlet, a way to connect with people, a way to kind of have my own voice and start a community. But it's, even to this day, it's like, it's still a hobby. I still just enjoy it for what it is. And I don't know whether that feeling, that beautiful kind of essence you have, whether that would be lost, or if that would kind of change if it became a business.
I agree. Yeah, I used to scuba dive many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
My instructors were so passionate about scuba, but then their business started to take off, and they started to just really lose that passion for it. And I think the same can happen with drones. If you start making it a business, and if, with YouTube as well, once you start depending on it for money, the drivers that you have for creating content change dramatically. They won't say it does, but it does. Let's face it, we do our jobs because we love them. I love my job. I've been with the company I'm with now for 10 years. That's the longest I've ever been with any employer. I'm normally a year here, and a year with the next, and a year with the next. But I love my job. I'm really passionate about it. If I got bored of that job, I would start to lose my passion for it. And with YouTube, I think if you start doing it as a career, you're very, very rapidly going to stop having that passion and love for it. So for me, I will never go full-time on YouTube, because I've got family, I've got work, and you need a balance between that. And being full-time on YouTube, it has a lot of demand. I mean, don't get me wrong, if I had 1 million subscribers, I'd be a millionaire. That would be nice. Yeah. But it's not all about the money, and there are too many YouTubers out there who are about the money. And I hate this new trend of sponsored advertising slots on some streams, where they're stopping to advertise a VPN platform, or another one I saw the other day, website builder. Oh, I'm sick of seeing these adverts. And some of my YouTube idols, some of the channels I really look at for inspiration, are starting to lose my subscriber, my subscription, because I'm sick of every 5 minutes there being an interlude, an advert break. So this is another tip. Once your channel is monetizable, so when you're over 1,000 subscribers, don't go overboard. Have an advert at the beginning. Maybe have an advert at the end, but just stick with one at the beginning, because. And what I often do as well is when I put live a new video, I don't have any adverts initially, because I want my subscribers to see a clean version of the video straight to it. And what I'll then do after a week is then I add the front video and maybe one middle front advert and maybe one middle advert, because they're not there to watch. Even when they're skippable, it's still irritating, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's a really cool idea, man. I didn't know you did that. Is that something you've been doing for a while?
No, and these are tips you pick up from other YouTubers as well. I saw that, I can't remember who I saw this tip from, but I thought it was a great idea, and I enjoy watching their videos without an advert at the beginning. When if I'm a loyal subscriber, I'm going to be quick to watch that video. So my reward there is not to have an advert. So I think it's a lovely idea. Maybe, sometimes it won't be a week. Sometimes it'll just be when I first publish it, and then 24 hours later I'll add an advert, so that any real loyal subscriber gets it advert free. I think that's a nice mechanism.
Yeah, no,
that's almost the selling point for subscription.
It is.
You get it ad free for the first week. We'll notify you when it's in, and watch it as it is. And then as you say, if somebody's watching historical videos, then adverts are in there. That's fine.
Yeah.
I really like. I mean, if I was subscribed, which I have now, subscribed to your channel, and got a notification that you'd put a new video up, and I knew that I could watch that for the first week without adverts, I'd be straight on it, because they give me shits, to be honest.
That's really good. Yeah.
And I've watched a few recently where it's literally every 2 or 3 minutes there's an ad break, and after like a couple of adverts, I've just switched off the video. I can't be bothered.
Exactly. Yeah, and it is
And
off-putting.
worse when it's the same bloody advert. So that it's not even a rotation of adverts. It'd be the same advert 3 or 4 times in a row, and I'm just like, yeah, this is too much like Channel 7.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. These
Yeah.
website builder ones, everyone seems to be using them. Squarespace, that's the one. Squarespace. I remember the name of it because of their bloody adverts, and that's sad
Yeah.
because I don't remember the video. I remember the advert,
Yeah.
and then I remember looking for another video. You know, it's so don't
It's
don't sell
guerrilla
out.
tactics.
Yeah,
They push it to try to get as much attention as possible, but it loses the essence of what it is. It just becomes
does.
annoying.
Especially when they're not even just saying, "Hey, by the way, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Go and check them out," and that's it. They don't.
Yeah.
They have a pre-recorded B-roll that they then play out, and it's a minute, 2 minutes long. There's a really, really good YouTube channel called Orange63. I recommend looking at this if you're into editing videos. This guy
Okay.
produces the best free transitions for Premiere and video tips and editing tips. Real idol of mine. But ruins it by adding 3 minutes or so of pre-roll trailer sponsored video into his videos, and you just skip through it, and it's just annoying. And it's a real shame that so many YouTubers are selling out by doing this now. Do YouTube for the content and because you enjoy it. Stop thinking about the money. You know, it's not about the money, it's about enjoying it. And I'm having a break from YouTube at the moment because I've moved house. We've just done a massive house move in Sweden, and so I'm pausing content production for a bit, but I'm doing. I can't wait to get back because I love it. Whereas when you start having to do this to pay the mortgage, to pay the bills, I don't think I'd love it anymore.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's it. And then you're so dependent as well on, a system that you don't really have too much support through, which I spoke to you about before. The real concern is the mental health of the YouTubers that are like actually stressing themselves out over how can I produce as much content as I possibly can. And it's coming from a good place. They want to survive. They want to eat, they want to pay their rent, but it becomes a bit, it changes the whole approach to it. You're not going into it necessarily for, the creative outlet. There is actually that money attached to it. So that's really cool.
There's a big difference. Sorry, Dan. I thought you were going to stop.
No, sorry.
There's a big difference in the mindset between doing something because you have to do it and doing something because you want to do it.
Exactly.
So I think that's where the problem is. Once you have to do this, then it becomes almost a burden.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I really want to do this review. I want to, tell people about this particular product. Is completely different from, I'm going to have to do this now. Got to get it done by the weekend because, people are expecting the content. I haven't written one for a couple of weeks, and you start putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's something you're doing because you really enjoy doing it and it's something you really want to be doing, then you'll find that time, and the timing will be what works for you. Because you're not under that sort of pressure.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you're absolutely right. Because of the house move over the last 2 months, I've said no to reviewing things, and I've declined companies' offers, which is really nice of them. But I've actually said no because the pressure to deliver, not only to get out there, well, first of all, to plan the story. What story do I want to tell? Where do I want to tell that story? Have I then got time to film it and edit it and then publish it and market that video and distribute it to all of the channels that I have? It's a lot of work, and I tell you what, I review a lot of pre-release stuff for DJI. So I was one of the first to get the Osmo Pocket, the Osmo Action, what's the Osmo Mobile 3. God, my mind is frazzled. I had a crayfish party in Sweden last night and drank a lot of snaps and aquavit, so I'm sorry. But just finding the time, when it's a bigger manufacturer, they want your review to be ready on a date. They have no control over my review content or the bias or any of that. My reviews are very neutral, and I never show them my reviews before they go live, by the way. Whereas some reviewers like iJustine and all of that, the commercial reviewers, don't get me wrong, I like watching iJustine. Who doesn't? But the content is very much commercial. It's an advert. It's not a review. But the pressure to get that review ready for the launch date, for example, the Osmo Action, I was on a business trip to Finland, I think it was, or somewhere, and that Osmo Action arrived with me about, I don't know, it was a few weeks before launch, and I was like, You know, because I want to review it. I want to get my review out there so that people know whether to buy it or not. And I remember I took it with me to Finland. It was absolutely freezing. And I was there, you know, luckily I was in a hotel by some water. So I was dunking it, tying it onto a long bit of string, dunking it in the water, doing everything I could, running with it, you know, in my suit and wearing my trousers. No one was allowed to see it. So if anyone walked past me, I had to sort of, you know, cover it over, because you get in big trouble when you sign you know, an NDA. And by the way, when you sign these NDAs, all they say is that no one's allowed to see the product you're reviewing. You're not allowed to talk about it with anybody. They don't say that your review must be positive or must be negative. You know, not that they'd say that, but there's a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah, but that's good to clear up.
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
good, because I think a lot of people think that because they received a review unit, they have to say a particular thing. But like you said, it's not the case.
No,
and if it was the case, if they wanted that, I'm sure that's something, because, you know, I've had people reach out and try to get me to say a particular thing, and they're the ones I blatantly refuse. I agree with you. I don't like the idea of the company getting to see the video before it goes live. So then they get that final say. They can cut it again. They can tell me what to do. You know, that takes away the creative control, and it becomes more of an advertisement then.
It is an advert. Yeah. I mean, as soon as the manufacturer has control over your content, you're not in control of it anymore, and therefore it's not really your content. And I'll never ever let that be the position. And I remember rendering out that the Osmo Pocket as well. You know, I had that a long time before launch, and I gave them lots of feedback, and we went through lots of firmware and software iterations with that to get it right. And I remember editing out that as quickly as I could, because just as I was about to finish my review set, they released a new bloody app. So then my review, you know, is kind of irrelevant before it's even live, and it needs to be relevant for launch. So I had to reshoot a lot of that with the new app. And I remember editing it, and the video was like almost 20 minutes long. And I remember rendering it out and thinking, I really need to sleep because I've got work in the morning. And it was like maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. And then Premiere crashed. So right at maybe 97%, it must have hit a transition that the renderer didn't like. So I had to start it rendering again. But, you know, you're under a lot of pressure. And that's why I've reduced the number of product reviews I do now, because I just found I didn't enjoy it. And, you know, Banggood would send me stuff. I remember one video I shot where I showed the pile of stuff that I hadn't opened yet. And it was in my spare room. And I'm not kidding. There were about 8 or 9 boxes of products from Banggood, GearBest, HobbyWow, DJI, PGY Tech, Freewell. I just don't. I say no now to all of them, because I'm not reviewing any more budget crappy drones, because they waste people's money, a lot of them, and I just have no time. I don't enjoy it, so I say no now. And, you know, most of the reviewers of those products are doing it for affiliate income, and I hold my hands up. I did it for affiliate income as well. I was honest with my reviews, however, not many are. But if something was rubbish, I said it was rubbish. But I'll be honest, it funded me being able to buy a camera, to buy an editing laptop. So all of that, you know, the affiliate income, I fed it straight back into the channel to make better content for people. And hopefully the viewers see that.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. So there's a lot in there. Like I resonate a lot with that message of, you know, you get a lot of products sent through, and it becomes almost this cloud in your physical space, but also in your mental space. And I found myself accepting too many products, and then feeling like it was a burden on me, that I had to figure out something to do. And it lost a little bit of that, you know, that love that I had for it, because I was saying yes to so many. So like, I really resonate with that. And that's great that you've recognized that. I think, you know, for a lot of people, if they are in their tech review space, it's really exciting. You know, the first time someone goes, I'll send you something for free, like, that's so exciting. But if you really kind of take a step back and recognize, you know, they have an agenda to this. Like, they're getting free advertisement and exposure out of you. You're putting in a lot of work. So in terms of the return on investment of your time, you know, it just becomes something you have to weigh that up sometimes. If you're not enjoying it as well, like I find myself, you know, I'm very selective as well. And if I accept a product, which I have, you know, in the past couple of months back, I accepted a few, and then, you know, I just didn't really feel like I wanted to do it. And sometimes I don't do the review because I have control over that. But yeah, no, I think that's really good to hear, man.
And it is, you know, I've often thought about turning this channel into more of a tech channel. I'm putting the webcam there, by the way, so that your viewers can see
that's cool.
the video as well. But This video, I don't think people realize the time it takes to shoot and edit a video. This was for the Osmo Action. This video is 19 minutes long. I'm not kidding. The amount of footage, all shot in 4K as well. Yeah, 4K, was gigantic. Absolutely gigantic. And this is in Finland, I think, where I took it. Testing EIS. You have to test every single feature of that product. And then you've got to do things like, split screen to show a real comparison on and off against the Osmo Pocket. So I had two products with me, two lots of footage, having to then also plan the story, how, what I'm going to show, when am I going to show it, all of that. It's such an amount of time. And so, to be honest, when you get a new drone for review, you've then got to think about, well, I need a shot on the ground, I need a shot in the air looking at it, I need a shot from the drone, and it really becomes. I mean, the one I'm really proud of actually is the Mavic 2 APAS. I don't know if you've seen this review that I did, but this one I was so pleased with, because it was the first time I'd ever used Adobe Premiere's multi-camera editing mode, and it meant that I shot this entire video by myself. And for anyone else out there wanting to make YouTube footage, use Adobe Premiere's multi-camera, because I had three cameras. I had the drone, I had a Canon that I was holding, not a Nikon. I had the Mavic Air's onboard footage, and I had all three, and I had a screen recorder on the app going at the same time. Now, normally, before I discovered Adobe Premiere's multi-camera, which I'd never used before, I would have had to have edited all of this myself by just dragging timelines. You know what it's like. It's a headache. Yeah. It's a nightmare. Whereas
it's a puzzle.
It is. But you know what? Multi-camera in a Premiere makes it like a game, because what you do is drag all three clips onto your timeline. You turn them into a multi-camera, and then all you do is hit play. And as the video's playing on your Premiere timeline, you press buttons on your keyboard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you've got other cameras. And then what that does is flick between the cameras, so you become a live cameraman.
That's awesome.
So that's how I edited this. So this is the Mavic Air's shot now that the viewers can see. The viewers on YouTube can just see the actual end video. And then I decided, I then wanted to show the trees I'm about to come through. So I hit the Canon to show what the hell is this Mavic Air 2 about to do. And then I show the app. So again, I'm flicking between them so the users can see the app shot. And if you decide you've edited it wrong, you just wind the video back, press play again, and then re-edit by pressing 1, 2, and 3. It's absolutely brilliant fun. And it meant that I could film all of this myself, which is... I love this shot. This really shows how clever the APAS system is. Flying through these trees all by itself.
Wow, yeah.
And the end of this, I then start to run. So really test it. Oh, come on, YouTube. It's probably because we're streaming as well.
Ad. Here we go.
Advert. Sorry, folks. Well, it's a few weeks old now. Here we go. So running through the forest, carrying a heavy tripod and a heavy Canon, and it's following me, and I'm not even looking at the drone. But look at that.
That's amazing.
This is almost...
That shows you a lot of evolution right there. It does,
doesn't it? Yeah, my Mavic 2 couldn't do that. I was actually going to... This is the funny thing, really. I was actually going to film a Mavic 2 APAS comparison, and Mavic 2 didn't even get through the first entry into that forest. So I thought, I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah. That'll be a short video.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, so it would actually just stop, would it? It would stop the...
Yeah, wouldn't go through. I mean, ultimately, it could have. But I think DJI decided that, from a safety perspective, they've massively limited the capabilities of the Mavic 2. There's no reason why the Mavic 2 could not be upgraded to APAS 3. I personally think it's got as much processing power on board that it needs to do it, but they've limited it. And as per DJI's evolution, if they stick APAS 3 on the Mavic 2, people will say, why should I buy the Mavic Air 2? Which is a shame.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. And that's just business, really. They've got to have some sort of offering in each range to make it stand out. Otherwise, like you said, why would you bother? You would just get that high-end one. Or...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brad in the chat sorry, Feel Good Danny, love that username in YouTube, has said any news about the smart controller versus Air 2. I love the smart controller. I can't tell you how much I love that product. Yes, it's expensive, but it makes me pull that drone out and fly it at times when I normally couldn't be bothered, because I can't be bothered to get my phone in that horrible old controller. But yeah, when I got the Mavic 2, before the Mavic 2's launch, Mavic Air 2, DJI gave me all the pre-release materials, and I said, will it be compatible with the smart controller? And they said, yep, about 2 weeks after go live, maybe it'll be compatible. And it's not. We're now, 2 months? And it's such a shame. And I think they're working on it. I believe the challenges relate to the fact that the app on the smart controller is only 32-bit, not 64. Something like that.
Okay.
And I think that's the big challenge with it. But I hope that at some point they'll introduce that compatibility. But what I would say, Brad, don't hold back. You just said you've been holding back on the smart controller because of Mavic 3. First of all, there is no Mavic 3 at the moment. There are a few channels out there that keep going on about it and spreading this misinformation about OIS, optical image stabilization. It must be the Mavic 3. Well, we don't know that. And a drone with a mechanical gimbal doesn't need mechanical OIS. And I think a lot of these commentators don't understand what OIS actually is. But you certainly don't need OIS and a mechanical gimbal, for the same reason that if you mount your iPhone, which is one of the only phones with optical image stabilization OIS as opposed to EIS, if you mount that Apple iPhone onto a mechanical gimbal, the first thing they say to do is disable OIS, because otherwise you get a juddering effect.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And again, there was another leak from the FCC database, of course, that showed that they've revised some elements of the existing patent, however you want to say it. That doesn't mean there's a Mavic 3. It just means that DJI are updating their patents. Probably because of the litigation brought against them recently. They're covering their backs now. And the piece of litigation was about the folding mechanism. So I think they're just protecting themselves by updating old patents. There might be a Mavic 3, but guys, don't get hung up on it. Buy the drone you want to buy and fly it. Just don't waste your time, because why not wait for the Mavic 5 or Mavic 6?
Yeah. Exactly. You'll always be waiting for that next thing, next golden thing. So I guess that's a kind of a good transition. We haven't really spoken about the future of drones. And, one thing that stands out to me that, might be a thing in the future, I don't know if there's like kind of legal ramifications for it, but have there been any waterproof drones or rainproof drones? Is that something that you think will be coming at some point?
There have. I mean, people have tried. So Lily, you might remember Lily. That was said to be waterproof. In fact, I got offered one the other day, a beta model. He wanted a couple of $100 for it, and I couldn't quite justify that. I actually wanted $300. But if any of my backers would like to see me doing a video on Lily, an actual beta Lily with the controller, the bracelet, let me know. Maybe if you want to contribute. If anyone wants to send some super chats in this feed now, then I will buy that Lily, and it will be one of my next videos. Because that was a waterproof drone. You threw it and it would take off and fly. But unfortunately, they failed miserably. Another crowdfunder that was a disaster, or a pre-order campaign. There are some others, though. There is Spry from... what's the company called? The Orange Drones.
Not Autel?
No, they look like the old old Autel drones. Oh, what's their name? Spry drone. This is their racing waterproof drone. Swell Pro, that's it. I've reviewed Swell Pro stuff. I reviewed their FPV quad, actually. It was really good. It was solid. I smashed this drone straight into a tree, and it was fine in the early days of FPV. But yeah, they've got Spry, which is a waterproof racing drone with a stabilized camera. But they do also have their main Swell Pro drones, which are a bit rickety and a bit DIY, but they are waterproof and they're not bad. They've been going for a long time, Chinese company. I don't quite know how they've gone on for so long now, but oh, Mike, you're right. You can't send super chats on this channel because it's not monetized yet.
Oh, of course.
But oh well. But if my investors on the other channel want to invest in a Lily, then I will review it. But yeah, waterproof doesn't really appeal to me, to be honest. I'm not interested in flying a drone that can get wet. I just don't really need to.
What kind of things would you like to see? What do you think is like the number one feature for you?
I was discussing this with the other day, actually. And sorry, just to say, Mike said, yeah, we need to get over 1,000K on this channel. I would love this channel to grow. And very quickly to explain, I started this channel. This is Droning On Live, which is my channel for, because I found that the editing process takes so long, and filming and putting together these really, creative videos. And so I wanted a way to just put content up there quickly. So I started Droning On Live, which I film just with my mobile phone, and I put them live on the mobile phone with no editing. It's quick and dirty, and if anything's breaking, I can get it on there really quickly. So you'll see some videos on here, because what I also do is upload any raw footage. Let's say when I went out and shot that Mavic Air 2 APAS test, I hadn't published the video yet, but what I did is gave my Droning On Live viewers a treat by just shoving up some raw footage straight from the drone with no editing, to actually show that it nearly crashed twice. And so
Just stops them.
Yeah, a lot of raw footage that I put on there. There's my wife. So you get to see a Swedish girl as well. But
There you go.
It's a channel to basically just put stuff up quickly, and I love the fact that I can just film and dump it and make it live. The new DJI Osmo Mobile 4, an FCC tweet came out from Kanzhaji on that, so I did a quick video about that. So yeah, that's the one channel, and then obviously I've got the other main channel, which is the main Droning On channel. So this only has 651 subscribers. The Droning On channel has 32,000, and I'm so grateful to everybody on that channel that subscribed. So yeah, sorry, that's just to explain the two channels.
Yeah. So in terms of your dream feature then, do you have some dream features that you're looking for?
Yeah, so Ray in the chat has just made a really valid point. 360 camera on a drone. Why have we not seen that yet? And we've seen lots of little action cameras now, which are modular, whereby you get two modules to give it 360, two cameras where you can slot them in. I can't remember which model it is.
Is it Insta?
Yes,
360?
Insta 360. So they could easily do it by, sticking one of those on top of the drone and the underside, and build it in a way that the props don't get in the way, so that somehow we end up with a beautiful, maybe doing as Skydio do, with multiple cameras around the drone, so that ultimately you can build a 360-degree image. That would be nice. To be honest, besides that, I have everything that I want in the Mavic Air 2. I really do. And people keep saying, when's the Mavic 3 out? I want the Mavic 3. I want the Mavic 3. Why do you want the Mavic 3? We've got over 30 minutes of flight time, 4K, 60 frames a second, which most people don't understand why they need 60 frames a second. They just want it. We've got it in a compact form factor. It fits in that tiny little carry bag. I don't need anything else.
Yeah, it seems like, a lot of people are kind of chasing that next kind of hot item. And there's probably also an element of, you don't want that buyer's remorse where you buy something and then 2 days later a new drone's announced. And maybe that's why people are so persistent trying to find out, to make sure that they're not going to miss out. They're going to spend $1,000 and then this new drone comes out that they'll miss out on all these new exciting features.
That's true. That's
true.
But
I do agree with you, man. Like a lot of the stuff that's coming out now anyway, like you would be happy with, the Mavic Mini, the Mavic Air, even the older Mavic Air, the original, like they're all great. The original Mavic Pro is still a really good
Pro. You can buy an original Mavic Pro now for, I don't know, a couple of $100 probably. And it's far more capable than most people need, even now, even today. I mean, this little thing, that can do, you saw what I did in the hotel. And this thing is so, the 2.7K limitation, but scale that up to 4K, as I do with the hotel video. I scaled it up to 4K and it looked beautiful. And I tested, I don't know if you've seen this in your Mavic Mini group, but again, using the Premiere's multi-camera mode, I took the Mavic Mini out on a incredibly windy day, 38 km/h winds or 25 miles per hour. Are you miles per hour or kilometers in Australia?
Kilometers.
Oh, very sensible too. Good. 38 kilometers per hour.
That's crazy. Yeah, I shared that one in the Mavic Mini group actually.
Oh, good.
It's crazy, man.
It did
It shows you
absolutely
how
brilliantly.
capable it is, right there. That's an example of how capable it is in high winds.
Yeah, that's you would think that's a paused shot then, but actually it was still. And when you look at how much the drone's moving, and I kept hearing about these people, with flyaways and challenges in heavy wind, and yeah, if you're not careful, but look at that onboard footage, it's so calm.
Yeah,
So
you can't tell.
I really think we have peaked in drone tech at the moment. We've managed to make them smaller. We've made them fly for over 30 minutes. We've given them 2.7K or 4K cameras with the Mavic Air 2. They have got sensors galore. Yeah, I'd like some more sensors on the Air 2. But to be honest, if I was buying a new drone now, having flown the Mini, the original Mavic Pro, the Mavic 2 Pro, the Mavic Air 2, I've got an Anafi here. Anafi, however you want to pronounce it, is a lovely drone. I really enjoy that drone. I would buy today the Mavic 2 Pro, personally.
Okay. Have you used the Mavic 2 Zoom?
I haven't. I'm not interested in zooming in when I can crop my 4K footage from the Mavic 2 Pro, and I can understand that the benefit of being able to zoom into an object instead of flying close to it. I'm bored of dolly zoom. That's way overdone. So I have no need for a zoom. And the Anafi has a zoom, but I've never used it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I used it in Bulgaria when I took the Anafi. I was going on holiday to Bulgaria, and Parrot sent me the Anafi, which I must say I think is a great drone. If it's a tie-up between the Anafi and this, to be honest, for your first drone.
Really?
This is smaller. Yeah, the Anafi is absolutely brilliant, and the transmitter on the Anafi is lovely.
What is it that you like so much about the Anafi?
It's portable. It's very, very light. It's not under 250 grams, unfortunately, but it's very, very capable. It's 4K. It's the transmitter is so nice to hold in your hands. DJI could learn a lot. I can see why Skydio picked up the transmitter. Actually, didn't Skydio are using the Parrot Anafi transmitter for the Skydio drone?
Right.
And it's this is 4K straight out of the Anafi with no video editing, no color grading or anything, and it's a really, really capable drone. Its gimbal isn't as good as DJI gimbals, so that the stability of the footage is not quite as good in wind. There's a little bit of wobble you can see there, but it's a really, really nice drone. You get a good long flight time. You've got the fully 90-degree upward tilt as well.
Yeah, I liked that idea. Yeah. Does that work quite well?
Yeah, I couldn't think of what to do with it. So in my testing of it, I showed, shooting upwards. You could use it to inspect things, I guess.
Yeah.
But you can create some really cool optical effects like this, flying under a tree.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know what else you can.
But also, yeah, like where are the applications for that? I guess.
Exactly.
I guess for inspection, that's a good point for sure. Under a bridge or something.
Yeah.
If you wanted to inspect underneath something, yeah.
There's not a lot else that you can do. This is the zoom of the Anafi. So that's.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's I think it's a 4 times optical zoom. But I don't really know what else. Not really sure. Hey, Drone Viral. Hey, Aussie Tech in the chat as well. And just say, hey, Brad as well. Thanks you guys for joining.
Because that was something I was thinking the other day, have drones kind of peaked? Like similar to how smartphones, they're now adding just more cameras, more power to them, but they're not really wowing too many people. Like, have drones hit that point, do we think?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the time when you always wanted to have the next mobile phone. So I've had pretty much every Samsung Galaxy since they started. I've still got most of them, actually. In fact, my Galaxy 3 S3 I still use for when I paraglide, and I've got that's my cockpit computer, so I've got it on my lap so I can see where I am navigating. S3 still works, but you knew that with the Samsungs, every year the new one was out and it did so much more, so you changed to the next, the S4, the S5, S6. But I bought the S8 and the S9 came out, but my S8 still worked brilliantly. The battery still held brilliantly. The features weren't any different, really. The camera was the same sensor, I think, so I didn't upgrade to it. The S10 came out. The only reason I bought the S10 is because I smashed the screen of my S8, and it was cheaper to get an upgraded phone than to change the screen on it. But we're now on the Samsung 20 S20 now, the new S20.
Yeah.
I don't need it. So I think drones have almost hit the point where we had to upgrade. You know, when you think of the original Mavic Pro, 20 minutes of flight, you know, it wasn't quite long enough. It was very heavy. The only reason we upgraded was because it was an upgrade. But now, yeah. I mean, Geeks Varna says, in my personal opinion, consumer drones will be dramatically different within 5 years, both through tech advances and regulation. He's right, because regulation is forcing drones to be lighter and forcing them to be compliant to some CE standards now in Europe, at least. And that will come into the rest of the world as well. So that will drive the change and evolution of drones, I think. Regulation and what the consumers want. And I don't know, to be honest, I don't need anything else at the moment. And I love drones and fly them all the time. So what the average consumer needs that flies them once a month, I don't think they need anything else, apart from cost to come down.
Yes,
it'd be interesting to see where the Mavic 3 goes, because I know there's still speculation as to what the specs will be, and there's a lot of, I guess, rumor mills out there. But one of the ones that piqued my interest was they were talking about it being set on an H-frame, like the Inspire, but foldable, so a collapsible H-frame, which make it much more stable in the wind. So I mean, that could be interesting if they move away from the current form to something that has more benefit. So, yeah, whether it's lighter or, whether it's more stable in the wind, I mean, that might be a sort of tipping point.
Yeah, it could be. And again, that was just a rumor. It wasn't a Mavic 3 definite. It's a rumor. I honestly can't see them changing the form factor of the Mavic. I really can't see that happening. I think if that H-frame could simply be an Inspire Mini or something like that, because people love the gimmick. I reviewed a budget Inspire clone once that had the folding undercarriage up, and it was so fun. It was a gimmick until it broke.
Yeah.
But I'm really not sure. I think I liked the original Mavic Air look. I think I don't personally love this look, and I said this in my Mavic Air "What's Wrong with It" video, that I think it should have been prettier. They should have adopted the sleek and rather sexy looking Mavic Air look and feel, because the Mavic Air 2 I don't think is, they've just copied the original Mavic Pro, and I don't think it's a good look personally.
Yeah, no, I've got to agree with that. That was the comment that I made in my video. Like, I loved how unique the Mavic Air looked, and in terms of just marketing and for the everyday user, like, it makes sense for them to streamline the range. So when you go into a store, it's like you can have a Mavic Mini, a Mavic Air, or a Mavic Pro, and you look at them, they all look the same, and they can just talk about the specs. But the Mavic Air had that unique, stealthy, kind of sexy look to it, and then it just disappeared. It's now they all look the same.
You could have sat the original Mavic Air on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, and it would have fitted right in. It just looked cool, didn't it? But this just looks a little bit like an egg carton. I don't like the look of the Mavic range at the moment. I think they could be far prettier, but they're functional, aren't they? And they've obviously deemed this to be aerodynamic, although, maybe.
Yeah, cool. Well, I know that we've been going for a while. I don't want to hold you up for too long. So just kind of wrapping this out, are there any last thoughts or anything we've missed or anything you'd like to clear up or anything before we kind of end it?
I think there's one thing I would say. There's a lot of, we talked about my roots in flying and aviation and stuff like that. And there's one topic that I'm very, very keen on, which is aviation and safety. And I joined a stream the other day with good old Bruce from XJet. And he's very drones own the sky, aircraft don't. And I completely disagree with that view. And, I think for everyone watching, we have to remember that we are guests in the sky. And the people that are up there in person, the aircraft, the manned aircraft, commercial or private, they are up there and their lives are at risk. I'm not saying a drone will take down an aircraft, but it will cause significant damage to an aircraft. So regardless of whether it will take an aircraft or a helicopter, plane or a helicopter out of the sky, that's kind of irrelevant. I don't want to ever see a drone operator causing £100,000 worth of damage to a light aircraft or a jet, because that will be globally in the press and media, and it brings us all into disrepute, and it tarnishes us all. So when we're flying our drones, we are guests up there in the sky. Be aware of what else is around you. Be aware of the airspace. Be aware of what's called NOTAMs, Notice to Airmen, which is an alert that something else is going on. For example, there's a balloon fiesta happening, and so you should avoid this area on this day or between these hours. And just be responsible, because nobody wants to be the next person in the press and media criticised for flying their drone irresponsibly. And I have a vested interest here, as you can see here. I do fly paramotors or paragliders, and when I'm up there in the sky, I've been up there flying around before, and I've heard a meow, and I thought, what the hell was that? And somebody was flying their FPV quad below me, and we had right of way. It was our flying field where we fly our paramotors. Somebody else had decided to fly their FPV quads below us. Now, luckily, they didn't try and ascend and fly with us at our altitude. They stayed, quite low down. And I'm at, you have to be at 500 feet after you've taken off in a paraglider or any light aircraft, in fact. Luckily, he observed the limit of his airspace of 400 feet. But had he not, and he'd lost control of his FPV drone, the sharpness of those props spinning, especially on a 5-inch quad, could tear right through my chute here, my wing. And, it's terrifying. So I've got a vested interest having, being up there and flying, that people are flying responsibly, and that, we've all got that we need to make sure that we're all careful when we're flying. Because otherwise, you might end up damaging a manned aircraft, or one day, who knows, it just hits the wrong piece and you end up taking that manned aircraft out of the sky. That would be horrific for us all as a community.
Yes, exactly right. No, that's a really good point for sure. Great. And anything else before we round this out?
No, just that this is our first proper stream on Droning on Live. So thank you, Dan, for, hosting a great show and for giving us an excuse to rapidly set this up, not really knowing what we're doing, but at least we know Zoom works really well. This is Zoom, by the way, guys, and we're using Zoom through OBS into YouTube, and it's worked very smoothly. So, and also for my viewers, please go and subscribe to Dan's YouTube channel, Dan's Tube TV on YouTube. Dan's channel was an inspiration for me when I was growing mine. So, please go and check out his channel. And thanks again to Keith as well for, joining and giving great input and running a great club as you do over there in Australia.
It's been great.
Cool. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. It's been great to actually finally chat to you and actually have this opportunity. It's been such a build up down and chat to you. So hopefully we can still, connect. Even as you said, to learn maybe a bit of OBS, we could connect and learn a bit more about that.
Definitely. And I have to thank Sean, who's in the chat, one of my mods as well from Geeks Varna. He's been brilliant at helping me to understand OBS. I've just thought, Open Broadcaster System, I think it stands for. But it's a way of streaming to YouTube for people who don't know what OBS is. But thank you, Sean, for all of your help and advice in getting OBS installed and working. But yeah, thank you very much. And to everybody in the chat as well for joining. Really, really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time. We did also have a few things that we didn't really engage with about favorite drones and first drones, but it was great to see everyone engaging as well.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you. We'll be in touch, I'm sure. Appreciate your time.
Definitely. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.